Hey Cozy Crew, it's Jessica with Stay Cozy Creative Co. And welcome back to my channel where I focus on hand knitting and hand crochet, sharing my own journey with you and helping you along your own creative journey. So today my project is, let's see if it'll, back there. Okay, so I have made 6 granny squares. I've used my sunflower granny square pattern for this project specifically, and I'm going to be making a poof. So, kind of my vision is to have a little footstool. I'm planning to put it up in my house, but I'm also realizing that the colors are kind of going to match this couch that I have up in the studio. So, yes, I still have my pink tree up. I will probably be taking that down soon, but this is where I'm going to be working today. So, I've laid out my 6 granny squares in the way that I'm going to connect them for my poof. And my goal is to show you how I'm doing that today and then to maybe get it stuffed. So we'll see where we get to. And before I get started, just a reminder to subscribe to my channel if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. And if you're new to hand knitting or hand crochet, I have a ton of resources on my channel for you, as well as on my website at staycozyco.com. I sell yarn, I sell patterns, I sell some of my own handmade goods, and I'm always available to answer questions. You can leave comments on any of my videos, and I do my very best to respond to every single one of them. Or you can send me an email if either I'm not getting back to you or you just want a space to kind of ask more in depth questions. So I think let's get started. Oh, and I should say that this sunflower granite square pattern that I'm going to be using today, I do sell the full pattern on my website, which is like comes in a PDF form and then has QR code to the full video tutorial, which is on my YouTube channel. So the video itself is free, but if you want like the written pattern and then also links to other videos, like in that I have videos for how to make squares into a pillow, into a blanket, into a handbag, into a tote bag. And then when this one's done, I'll be adding how to make it into a poof. So the pattern is really a good way to have all of those resources in one place because sometimes it can be tricky to find the videos that you're looking for on my channel. And it's just a good way to support me in my work and to ensure that I can continue making patterns and supporting you guys in this way. So, okay, enough of announcements. Let's go. So for this project, as well as almost all of my chenille yarn projects, you're going to need a lighter, and that's for connecting our yarn ends, and then a good pair of scissors for cutting any yarn that you need. So my plan today is to use a slip stitch style of connecting these squares together. And I use that same slip stitch for, I've used it for pillows, I've used it for blankets, I've used it for handbags, for totes. So it's very versatile, but the reason I'm choosing that is because I want to use this white to match the center of my sunflowers to the border that I'm going to be using. So if you want to do this project in the exact same way, but just don't want a pop of another color and you want it to kind of just maybe be more cohesive all the way around, then you could just use the same color that you use for this outside round to connect everything. There are other stitches and other ways to connect squares, but this one I feel like is pretty simple and straightforward, and I really like the look of it. So that's what I'm going to use. And I should say I've never made a poof before, so I'm going to kind of be figuring out how to do this as I go. And I think what I'm going to do is connect these around here so that I do one full square of a border so that these are together, and then work on folding up the sides as I go. So I think that sounds like a good starting point. Okay, so I'm going to move these ones out of the way. And to get started, I'm going to find the corner of my squares. And so I have 2 double crochets, 2 double crochets in each of the corners. And so there should be like these 2 loops that kind of go in between here. I'm going to find the one that's on the bottom because I'm going to work up this way, and I want to make sure that I get all of my, like the full end pulled in. If you start on this one, then you'll kind of have like a little unfinished spot here. So I'm going to do that one, and then on this one, here's that corner, and then here are those two loops, and so I'm going to do the one here. So the one that's kind of like curved around, but that will help pull that end together. So for getting started, there's a few ways we can do this, but what I'm going to do is we're only going to work through the back side of each of our stitches. So we don't need this top part of the loop, but we're going to basically lay those on top of each other and then push a loop up and through both of those. So you want a little bit of a tail, so then when we're done, we'll have enough to kind of make sure that everything goes together. But to work with this style of connection, I'm going to undo some of my yarn, place it over here, and then I'm actually going to put my yarn underneath my project because I'll be pulling up from the bottom up. So I'm going to take this first loop, and then now we're going to be connecting the loops that are across from each other on these squares. So remember, we're just going through this back part of the loop. So I like to put my fingers through there and then find the one on the other side. So my fingers are through 3 holes right now, or 3 loops. And then we're going to pull a new loop up and through all of those. So I'm connecting both sides and connecting to this border that I'm making. So laying this one down on top of that one next to it and pulling up and through. So especially with the chenille yarn, sometimes it can be tricky to keep track of which loop you're going through because it's so fluffy and it's easy for them to kind of get mixed up together. So it's just really important to pay attention while you're doing this. If you skip one on accident, then you'll find out at the end of the side because they won't line up evenly. And you'll just have to undo it and redo it again. Okay, so when we get to this end, this is our other corner. So we have these 2 loops that come together at our corner. So we're going to go through this first loop here. And then for my next one, so now I'm going to work my way up here. So I'm going to undo some more yarn. And now we're going to connect, so this other part of the corner. So like we would typically go through these, but then at the same time, I want to connect this corner. So what I'm going to do is only go through, so if here's the corner, there's this loop here. I'm only going to use this corner because I'm going to work up this way, and we'll connect the second part of the corner when we connect to the other side. So I'm going to go here and then pull the loop up and through. So it was at this point in my filming that my microphone died, and you can see that I've jumped ahead a little bit and gone around the corner and then around the corner again so that I almost have 4 squares connected. So you're just going to be connecting in the same way all the way around. And once you make your way all the way around that first square, you're going to finish up by going into that first loop in each of the corners and connecting those. If you remember, there should be 2 loops in each of your corners, but I'm going to keep that second one open so that when I flip this over and am ready to connect these 2 squares together, I will now start by going into that second loop in the corner. And so this will help keep it seamless and also make sure I don't get too much bulk in those corners with too much yarn. Make sure as you continue working on your project that you keep your working yarn on the inside of your poof so that it doesn't come to the outside, and always make sure that you're pulling that yarn up from the inside to the outside for a new loop. So when you come to your next corner, you're just going to go into that first stitch of the corner and connect those 2 together, and then keep that second part of the corner open for connecting a new square. So I'm just gonna kind of flip this up to get an idea of what it's going to look like, and it's super exciting because it's starting to come together. And I think I'm going to add this last square at this point, and I'm going to connect it across the top here. As with every corner, make sure that you line up your stitches correctly, and then I'm just going to work my way across here. And at this point, I still wasn't 100% sure how I was going to close up the top of this poof. I had kind of been going back and forth as to whether I wanted to close it up completely or leave one entire square open so that there'd be kind of like a flap on one side so I could easily take out the stuffing or the pillow forms or whatever I use to stuff the inside, or if I wanted to close up 3 of the 4 sides, and that's actually what I ended up doing. So when I came to my next corner, I decided to just finish off going back down towards the other border that I already had finished. And this got a little tricky with doing the border just because you have to keep the working yarn on the inside but pull the yarn up and through while also closing up the hole that you're actually working into. So what I do when I get to my next corner is that I actually trim my yarn, and then I'm going to pull the tail of that yarn up and through, and then I'm going to loop it around that border that I had previously made and tuck the tail back through the hole that the last loop came out of. So this kind of makes a faux finished loop, and it helps make everything look a little more seamless and not get too bulky, and also helps you actually finish off that corner. At this point, you're welcome to kind of finish off those tails on the inside and trim them and use your lighter to connect them, but I decided just to keep working, and I was going to do all that at the end. So now we basically just have to keep connecting the squares, and for this new corner here, I'm pushing a loop up and through that corner of my previous border to start off with a new piece of yarn. So I'm just going to do that so that it already looks attached, and then I'm going to work my way up the side, and then when I hit my next corner, work my way down the next side. And then I'm going to finish off that corner same way that I did with the other one, where I trim my yarn and then tuck it around so that it makes a loop and attaches to that previous border. So here again, I'm attaching some new yarn by putting a loop through that corner of my previous border, and you can just leave the tail of the yarn on the inside, and then like we're going to finish off all the other ones at the end, we'll do that at the same time. And here I'm going to finish up my last regular side in the same way I have all the previous times before. And now this poof is getting real. I'm very close to being done and have to make the final decision about how I want to close it up or leave it open. So I'm going to grab some options for stuffing this on the inside, and I only had a couple smaller pillows on hand. I can't remember if these were 12 by 12 or 14 by 14, or that must have been a 12 by 12, too small. So these are 14 by 14. And I thought that those would fit really well. And so I tried those on the inside and liked how they fit. It wasn't quite stuffed enough for my liking, but that's all I had. And so then I tried this 24 by 24, and it just was too bulky in all the wrong ways and wasn't going to work. I ideally would have liked to use all of this leftover stuffing that I have from previous projects with tube yarn, but I didn't have my sewing machine with me, nor did I have a pillow cover that I could use to stuff it with. I did have a person on Instagram suggest the genius idea of using this poof as storage for my child's stuffed animals and blankets. And so I tried this with my daughter, and it actually worked really well and fit a lot more than I thought that it might. So long story short is that it's up to you how you stuff this poof. But before we do that, remember to finish off all of your ends on the inside, because I almost forgot this part. And so I'm kind of just tucking the tail of my yarn through the loops just a little bit more, and then I'm going to trim it and then use the lighter to fuse the end to another piece of yarn. So once you finish off all of your yarn tails, then it's time to finish the top of the poof. So I'm going to add a loop here on one side, and then I'm basically going to do the same thing that I have been doing with my border, except I'm only going to go through this top square. So I am currently not attaching it to the square that is right next to it. And that is on purpose because I want it to appear finished, but I want to keep that gap open so that I can take out whatever is inside and wash this if need be, or if using as storage so that I can access those things on the inside. So here I'm just finishing off the end in the same way that I had in each of those corners. And then I decided that I wanted to add a button to the top part of my square right about here. And then I'm going to add an extra loop of yarn that will actually loop around that so that it kind of holds the top closed. I don't think this is necessary because it doesn't really seem like the top is going to flap open, but it was just a little detail that I wanted to add. And also, even though I added another piece of yarn here to loop around it, I also don't think that that is necessary when adding a button because you probably could just loop it through the top part of one of these mini loops that are already on there. I'm going to check to make sure that this yarn loops around the button, which it does, and it closes up very nicely. And now all I have left is to finish up these yarn tails. So I'm just going to loop that tail around one more stitch just to secure it, and then trim it a little bit shorter, use my lighter again to secure it, and then do the same thing on the other side. And this officially brings us to a completed poof. I am so thrilled with how this turned out and love the colors so much, love the size of it so much. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm always happy to help however I can. And you can find more on my channel at Stay Cozy Creative Co. You can find yarn and other patterns and tutorials on my website at staycozyco.com. And again, I'm Jessica, and until next time, stay cozy, creative, and kind.